So we're back for another panel conversation, again with local focus. Now there's been a lot of coverage of the data economy, how it's going to change our lives, but also how we're going to power it. As I mentioned this morning, if Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia were a country, that country would rank as the third largest producer of natural gas in the world. Or so ChatGPT told me. That was, okay, good. You always got to worry if the joke is going to fly or not. Okay, all right. So this panel is going to examine the efforts to use the region's natural gas resources to power the next wave of digital infrastructure. But not just natural gas, existing workforce, telecom, fiber, and so on. So please help me welcome our distinguished guests, and this time I'll read the bios first before the applause. So we have Senator Camera Bartolotta has represented the Pennsylvania State Senate 46th District with Beaver, Greene, and Washington County since 2014. And she is called the Mon Valley home for more than 3 decades. In Harrisburg, she serves on the Senate leadership team. We have Kenny Stein, is the current Vice President of Policy and has worked for the Institute for Energy Research since 2017. He received his JD from the University of Houston and his BA in International Relations from American University. His areas of expertise are too long to read off, so I'm going to say domestic and international policy, environmental regulation and policy, federal land management policy, the electric grid, federalism, legislative and legal analyses. We have Representative Jim Struzzi in his 4th term serving Pennsylvania's 62nd Legislative District, which consists of multiple Indiana County municipalities. For the 2025-26 legislative session, Jim was elected chairman of the House Republican Appropriations Committee. And then we all met Dan this morning, and so forgive me, I won't go through the whole bio again. Seems most of you met Dan long before I did, so you're probably grateful. I'm not going to continue to go through his bio, which is say he leads the Penn State Extension Energy Education team. So maybe to just get us started into level set, so we're all on the same page. Again, we talk about the data economy a lot. We talk about AI, artificial intelligence, so much. Let's get to a common understanding of what that means and like what some of the principal needs are. And Dan, I know this morning you'd mentioned that your energy extension, you're starting to get into that a lot. So maybe I could just start with you and you give us your perspective on what that entails.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks for having me here. Chip volunteered me to be here, and I get paid double today because I was on 2 panels, which is fantastic, right? So I got to tell you, early 1980s, just a little tribute to my father here. He developed the first commercially sellable computer program for the College of Agriculture, and it was called the Dairy Mini Analysis. And that was all contained on floppy disk. And remember, the name was Dairy Mini Analysis. Anyone want to guess how thick that stack of floppy disk was? Because it was about that. And we know that because we just cleaned out his house, among other things. But every student who went through the College of Agriculture in the Animal Science program would curse him and say, what is mini about this thing, right? Now, we moved forward, and at some point, we all had servers in our office, okay, if you were old enough, and that was that storage on site, and then we eventually moved to cloud storage, was just keeping your information in a variety of places. And so I had a number of conversations internally and externally with people about this whole AI data center business. And folks generally land on, well, that is just for making TikTok videos and memes, okay? So I wanted the opportunity to talk about AI, and it's not, I'm not promoting it, okay? I'll tell you right now, AI has no conscience. So there's some very good things that could happen here, and then there are some bad things that could happen here. So what we're looking at in the future, it really is generative AI, and generative AI isn't like a super Google where it just Googles, follows more sites to get the information. It's actually generating its own pattern of thought. It's taking a set of data and reaching a conclusion for better or worse, okay? And that involves quite a lot of computing power. So I wanted to give you some, so these neural networks and all these kind of things, just chew up a boatload of power, but some of the plus and minus things it's going to be, okay? In the future, medical images will mostly be read by AI, and they'll be almost flawless, okay? So those x-rays, PET scans, MRIs, they're not going to miss that teeny tiny shadow, okay? They're not going to miss that ever, all right? Breast cancer treatment protocol, right now we go to send that genetic testing off. There's a variety of people who have to weigh in. In the future, that's going to be minutes, okay? With AI properly used, it's going to be minutes to come back with your treatment plan. This also, in the non-medical sense, predict equipment failures, very code software. Data analysis is a huge one. Design innovation, supply chain. Even for, weirdly enough, we're going to have an energy problem because we're going to have so much more energy use. But even within that realm, AI kind of promises part of the solution of being way more efficient than we are today, okay? But it's all about the prompts, and these are not governed, nor are they governable. So I can ask AI to come up with a solution, a set of protocols for veterinary medicine, okay? But someone also can ask AI, what's the best way to hide a body, right? I proposed that example to my wife, and she thought it was a bad idea. Now, right now, by the way, if I Google that, and somebody can do a Google search, which is why I borrowed Kenny's phone earlier and asked that question just to see what it would spit back. But that's just kind of, in general, my summary. It's not just ChatGPT. It's not just Microsoft Word being able to fill in the last of your sentence. This is going to grow into a learning, thinking thing. And it will never be dumber than it is today. It will rapidly get more advanced, okay?
So can I use that as a segue maybe? As you mentioned the tremendous energy use, which is part of what the dialogues are about here today. Could I go over to you, Jim? Because I know that there's a big potential project coming up in your district, and this panel is about kind of how Pennsylvania can leverage, its existing resources to help meet some of that energy use. Is there something you would like to elaborate on?
Well, absolutely. Good.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jim Struzzi. I represent Indiana County, 62nd Legislative District. You probably heard about what's happening in Indiana County with the Homer City redevelopment project. A significant investment in Pennsylvania to the tune of about $10 billion. I have to take you back, though, to go through the history of this site. For 50 years, it was a coal-fired electric generation plant. Grid-level energy, pumping right out of Homer City into the grid to power the PJM and the entire East Coast. And then, over the years, they kept making changes related to the various air quality controls that the federal government was putting forth. And then in 2019, when the Wolf administration decided to, by executive order, enter into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, that was really what pushed them over the cliff. They saw that really there wasn't going to be a future for coal-fired electric generation with that type of policy threat hovering over them, the fact that they were going to probably have to pay more in taxes because of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative than they would have made profits. So they closed the plants, I think it was about 2 years ago now, shuttered it, and we were devastated in Indiana County. It was a great source of jobs, both direct jobs and indirect jobs, taxes for the school district, taxes for the local community, and it was devastating. People really were, what are we going to do? And then it was, I think, late last year, we had been meeting with the owners of the plant, myself and Senator Pittman, our county commissioners. They were a large international company, owned the plant, and we asked them, what are you going to do with it? And realizing the potential there at the time, they held on to it. Because it was a coal-fired electric generation plant for decades, you had the water resources there. You had direct access to the grid. you have a rail line that goes right into the site. It's roughly about 3,400 acres, give or take, although they have acquired some more property. And then they made an announcement that they were going to, again, invest $10 billion, 10,000 jobs over the life of the construction to create grid-level electric fire generation and data centers, large data centers. Now, they haven't said who is going to be using those data centers, but the site was already demoed. I was there for that, watched. If you've ever driven through Indiana County, up Route 119, you know the iconic towers that stood there, again, for 50 years. One Saturday morning in the spring, early spring last year, they dropped the towers. It was quite something to see, but to me, that was sort of the period on that paragraph, because we knew what was coming. And now, we were, as I said, the community was devastated for a couple years. We're like, how are we going to replace these jobs? How are we going to replace this tax base? And then they turn around and announce this investment. And they've actually now, they've demoed, they're bringing the construction company in to continue the demo work. They're actually blasting one of the remaining buildings today, or this evening. And then starting in the spring next year, all these construction workers are going to be coming to Indiana County. We have challenges that we've never faced before. We're going to have traffic jams in Indiana Borough, and we welcome that, right? But the other thing is, like, where do you house 10,000 workers? And I'm sure the senator can talk a little bit about that, but we're excited at what it's going to mean for Indiana County. When all's said and done, they're saying maybe 5 to 7 years of construction. Again, the influx of all your building trade workers. They're actually going to our tech schools and saying, hey, we want your high school students to be taking these classes so they can come work at the power plant. So they're actually ramping up their welding classes, their electrical courses. The power plant folks are talking to IUP, which is in my district, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, on staffing for the data centers when they're all in place to move forward. But I think the key thing here is, they're coming to Homer City because, one, they already had the site, right? They already had the infrastructure, but the main thing is they have the natural gas. I should say we have the natural gas here in Pennsylvania, unlike no other place in this country, and that is why we are so, I think, enticing for these companies to come in and build these data centers, because we have the resources that they need to do that. Now, I understand that these data centers do take a lot of water and infrastructure, and again, that's why Homer City was sort of ripe for this kind of investment, because all that stuff was in place. We still have some hurdles to get through with permitting and things like that, but I think, as far as I know right now, it's going very well. But they're saying, even after the construction, long-term, 1,000 jobs to staff these data centers in Indiana County. And if you're a county like ours with a population of roughly about 85,000 people, that's a big thing. So we're excited about the opportunity, and we would like to see that replicated across this Commonwealth, but there are some things that are going to have to happen from a permitting, from a policy standpoint in Harrisburg, that right now, even though Homer City's happening, it's going to hinder that kind of thing in other areas.
So you actually prefaced an issue that's going to come up, I think, in one of the panels tomorrow, where I reached out to the panelists and said, hey, one of the things I think would be useful for the audience here is, what is going to make projects shovel-ready, right? What is going to encourage that investment, okay? And you hit on one that I think is a good segue to camera, right, in terms of permitting reform. I know you'd introduced some legislation. Would you care to expand?
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me too. It was great to be here last year, and it was touch and go whether I could make it today, because I literally was in bed all day long yesterday. Who's had that nasty, nasty cold? It's been going around. Not fun. Yeah, hands are waving. But I really, really wanted to be here for this very reason, and this topic is so important and vital, and I think it's all oars in the water when it comes to data centers and AI, because we have to beat China. We have to beat China. Pennsylvania can do it if we get government out of the way. And as you said, permitting is a huge issue, and knowing how difficult it is to get a permit to really get almost anything done in Pennsylvania, I say that permitting is the dirtiest word in Pennsylvania. Predictability is second to that. But I do have a bill, Senate Bill 991, which is for accelerated data center permitting, and it piggybacks on legislation in the House. that has been sponsored by Ed Nelson and and you guys, Mullins and Barton. Really, what it does is it helps to streamline that permitting because there are multi-permits that have to be done when you have a data center or an AI center coming in. It's kind of an all of the above thing. So long as the project meets or exceeds federal guidelines, and it's an engineer that has a great background, a great track record of not, causing issues and having permits thrown back at them, let's find a way that they can be on a fast track. Give them the fast pass, if you would, so that they don't have to wait years. And this would combine permits so that they run in conjunction with each other instead of, okay, here's this one permit you have to wait 12 to 16, 18 months for. Okay, now you can get the next one. And then that would take forever and nothing would ever get done. So we're really having a push to get the Senate bill through as well as the House bill. And it's bipartisan and it's something we absolutely have to get done so that we can lead in the AI space and lead in the data center space.
So I know you're all here to hear from the panelists, not from me, but if I can relay a story. So working in the electric power industry, one of the things that I had focused on for a long time was queue management. So how long it takes to get projects onto the grid. And there's various elements of that even beyond permitting, but you would see backlogs of 2, 4, 5, even beyond years in terms of getting projects, that could actually get through the interconnection process, and that became a bit of a barrier. So when we speak a bit to, the need for permitting reform, the need to accelerate it, and so on, I'm not going to try to put anyone on the spot right here without notes, but just could you give us some examples or some quantification maybe of delays that you've seen, or maybe Kenny, I can turn to you and like some of the work you've done, and how are you seeing these delays manifest, and kind of your perspective on how we can be accelerating some of these new projects coming online?
Sure. The permitting point is actually, it's important in energy generally, obviously, but in the AI and data center space, it's actually of paramount importance because we're talking about building these data centers in the next 6 months, 12 months. Those are the timelines that these hyperscalers are talking about. They don't, if the project is going to take 5 years, they're not going to build it. They're going to build it somewhere else. So these are very short timelines, and that's why a project like Homer City is a priority, because they already have the electrical connections, they already have the land, like that. You've got that step up. So frankly, any delays are going to be a problem. And what we've seen, especially in the AI space, has been the problems with transmission. Where I'm from, I live in Northern Virginia in the data center alley, and all of my fellow rural landowners are busy fighting every possible transmission line that comes anywhere near them, because we already have power lines running through nearby and nobody wants more. And that's actually crimping the ability of companies to continue building in Northern Virginia, because they've used up the spare generation capacity that Dominion had, which is why a lot of these things were built there in the first place. And now they're looking elsewhere because they can't get transmission built, they can't get enough power. And that's why places like Pennsylvania are popular. They're building data centers in the middle of nowhere in West Texas, because there's ample supply of natural gas and plenty of land to build on. And also Texas is very relaxed about permitting. So it's even more important when we're talking about AI and data center that the permitting process can be done quickly. And I think that's something that the timelines here we're talking about are, when you're talking about building a natural gas power plant, sometimes you can't even build the power plant fast enough to be done on the hyperscalers' timeline. If you have any delays in your turbine manufacturing or transformers that are back ordered for years in some cases, pending, and those delays mean the project doesn't happen.
Again, you're really getting into like one of the, you should stay for tomorrow, so for one of the panels we want to get into. I want to ask just one more question, if I could, just in general here, and then I really think it would be useful to get a lot more audience participation and just pass the mic around and see what questions the room has. But we speak to the need to expedite permitting, and I brought up the interconnection issue as well. Can we speak to what that really means? all right? Because, you know, permitting sometimes becomes an evil, regulation sometimes becomes an evil, and it's not intended to be such, right? But just the application of, or just the processes that get built around it sometimes, you know, cause delays. So when we speak to that, like, what are we trying to expedite here? And maybe I stay with you, Kenny, and then open it up to the...
Yeah, so there's a double-edged sword to this, because when you talk about permitting delays, a lot of those delays are being part of a democratic society. In China, they can build things quickly because they just pack the people up and move them. Here, people have property rights. We have a litigation-heavy culture. So expediting permitting sometimes involves making eminent domain a little bit easier to achieve. The fight's over when you take someone's property through eminent domain, the cost that you have to pay. Sometimes people aren't going to be happy with that. The citing authorities for various things, that becomes, the legislature cares about that. Governors care about that. The federal government gets involved, depending on what level of approvals you're talking about. So it's part of the permitting reform is kind of democracy. And so when you're expediting permitting, there's a trade-off there between more public involvement and speed.
Understood. Is anything from just how you're trying to balance that kind of need for the democratic process versus not unnecessarily delaying projects?
Well, especially in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of properties that are waste coal places and, you know, brownfields and things that really can't sustain, housing developments and things like that. I'm actually working in 2 different locations in my district. One is at the Regina coal plant, and there is a huge group right now that is going to be putting in a data center. And their goal is a behind-the-meter approach, because a lot of these places can go ahead and put in, all sorts of different energy-producing elements that don't pull from the grid, and as a matter of fact, might be able to put some electrons back onto the grid. That's a win-win for a lot of people. But again, so many brownfields, so many abandoned coal, facilities. There's one up in Burgettstown at the moment that I'm trying to help with them to convert that to something that is useful, because for 65 years, the family has been paying to mitigate coal wastewater, and they're a little tired of doing that. So just out of the goodness of their heart. But we have in Pennsylvania acres and acres and acres of brownfields that can be utilized for data centers and AI centers.
I would just say that there are some real life examples of permitting essentially shutting the door on investment in Pennsylvania. The gas plant in Renovo, the U.S. Steel, I believe, the investment years ago down in western Pennsylvania. And I can tell you that the Homer City redevelopment folks are very concerned. Their air quality permit will hopefully be issued here by the end of this month. They have to go through the process. And I will also say that the DEP and the administration have been good working with those, with their team. But that, I think, is an anomaly. I don't think that's something you see happen all the time where they're working hand in hand. But I think everyone realizes that a $10 billion investment in Pennsylvania at a time when we haven't seen any investment related to natural gas, really back to the announcement of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and that's not anecdotal, that's factual. And so the permitting process, unfortunately, has given Pennsylvania a very bad reputation when it comes to attracting business and growing business in the energy sector here, and we need to change that.
So there's lots of directions we could go, but I'd actually like to open it to the audience if you all have any questions or comments for the group here. We've got plenty of time, so we can always go back to, was that Landon? Do we have a mic, or I'm actually willing to rove the room myself. Okay, I'll do that.
Well, great to be back in Oil City. Landon Darrenson with the Atlantic Council out of Washington, D.C. It's a good experience to have state and local officials be speaking to some of these issues. In D.C., what you see driving some of the policy is much more of a macro global view of competition and great power competition. And so I can feel the need for jobs and economic prosperity being a principal driver here. I'm curious your thoughts as you push back into the federal level, what narratives you think actually should be have a lot of traction in terms of getting these policies, whether it's permitting reform or something else, actually achieved. Because I think we're all looking for that catalytic policy effect, and I don't know that we found it yet.
Can I chime in? Well, I was at the Innovation and Energy Summit with Senator McCormick and President Trump and many, many others, because in my little corner of the world, it's all energy all the time. And to see the excitement and the commitment for investing billions of dollars into Pennsylvania for energy and innovation was phenomenal. If we can keep that head of steam going, and if at the state level we can get some of the crazy policy and delays in permitting out of the way, focusing on that, I think the future is ours. It really is. And to know that we have a United States Senator who is all about it, and as a matter of fact, John Fetterman is really all about energy and innovation, and the night before the summit, the two of them had a fireside chat in Pittsburgh, and John Fetterman was all about it. So I think focusing on the future is not a Democrat or a Republican issue, and it shouldn't be. There shouldn't be a fight about that. There shouldn't be a fight about racing to beat China in an incredibly generational changing issue, which is artificial intelligence. We have to be the leaders in that. We really do. And I think to get behind it is something that even Governor Josh Shapiro is willing to do.
Thank you. Welcome. I think this question's for Mr. Stein, but anybody can wade in. We almost got to the point with this morning to talk about the electric grid, which I understand is maybe not up to speed for the next 3 years worth of addition of data centers and that sort of a thing. Can you comment on that and what it is we can do to be helpful as a legislature to improve that?
Sure, yeah. PJM has a problem. It's been a long time coming. This is 10, 15 years of, in my opinion, poor policy decisions that we've reached this point where PJM does not have a lot of excess capacity available. And the projects that are in line, we've talked about the interconnection queue briefly. The projects that are in line are overwhelmingly wind and solar projects, which, whatever their value, they're not appropriate for AI. They're not going to provide that on-demand, always-on power that AI requires. So that's a significant limitation for Pennsylvania in trying to step into a strong role in AI, because Pennsylvania is part of PJM, and part of the problem is that you can have the best policies you want in Pennsylvania, but PJM is a regional association, and the renewables mandates and bad policy in Maryland, in New Jersey, in Delaware, that affects Pennsylvania too. So some of those limitations you can work around. We already talked about power generation behind the meter. That's a way for these projects to get out of that. But it's a very real limitation, and they're again, when we were talking about the timelines of building new power plants, they can't get built fast enough in PJM, and anything that is built is needed for the wider grid, and it can't just be reserved for AI. So I do think that's the problems of PJM, the problems that, especially the capacity market that's raising the cost of electricity rates. That's why electricity rates are going up. That's not easily solved. And I do think that is going to be a significant limitation for Pennsylvania trying to play a large role in AI. When you have a location like Homer City that already has that grid connection that's already there, that gives you that opening. But there's a reason why, like I already talked about in Northern Virginia, it's very hard to build data centers there because there's not enough power. Northern Virginia is part of PJM too. There's a reason why a lot of these huge projects are being built in West Texas, or being built in places like the Northwest United States, where there's a lot of hydropower. That excess of power is important, and that's got to be something that's here today. And Pennsylvania has the potential for that excess of power because there is so much natural gas, but it doesn't exist today. So that's why some of these permitting issues are so important. And again, the timelines are short.
So before I hand the mic off to, I guess, Andrew, using point of procedure, I guess, to get a, no? Yeah, exactly, using point of procedure to get the mic. Just a quick question to Kenny. You mentioned capacity market, raising prices. So I think, like, from my perspective, I think a capacity market is a good way to incentivize new generation to come into the system. Again, there's all different kinds of approaches on how we can get new generation to the system. So I would just appreciate your perspective, like on the pros and cons from where you sit of capacity markets and whatnot, or maybe explaining to maybe the audience what we mean by capacity market as opposed to an energy-only market.
Sure. So the capacity market has nothing to do with the electricity you get today when you plug in your device. The capacity market is about ensuring that there is electricity available in around 3 years. It's this future capacity. And it's ensuring that there is enough excess capacity, enough headroom for the max demand, but in 3 years, not max demand today. And the way capacity markets are meant to work is that you have an auction several years in advance, and that the money from that auction either provides the financing for a project to be built, or it ensures that, say, an older coal plant will stay open for the next 3 years in order to provide that excess capacity, that backup capacity in the future. The problem is that what has happened to the PJM capacity market is, and part of why it's kind of gone haywire at this point, is that there's no excess power plants available now. So the most recent capacity market auction earlier this year hit the price cap that they had. The price would have continued going up. But the problem is there's no excess power at any price. And once that happens, the capacity market has effectively broken down. And there's a number of reasons for that. The part of it is, like I said, it's 10 years of bad policy, taking offline the coal plants that could have provided that capacity market backup. But again, there's not really a near-term fix for that. Part of why rates have been jacked up is because the capacity market is expensive, and the hope is that now there's money to be made in the capacity market, so hopefully people will start building plants in order to take advantage of that. But there's no necessarily a guarantee of that. And again, when we're talking about timelines, you don't get a natural gas power plant built in 6 months, which is kind of when we need the power.
Great panel, everybody. A quick question. I think that's on a lot of people's minds here that I run into in Oil City in this area. So after the Senator McCormick and President Trump were in Pittsburgh with the conference, I got a lot of questions. Andy, how applicable are the goals that they outlined concerning these AI data centers, the whole 9 yards? How applicable are they to the specifics of this area in revitalizing it and repurposing? In this town, we are literally knocking down buildings to create parking for reasons that I fully can't understand, because I never have a problem finding a parking place. Okay? I realize access is a different thing, don't get me wrong. But we are making big decisions in Oil City, which is a shell of what it once was, right? And looking to repurpose buildings, including the one that you're in right now. So I know Dan and I have spoken about this, and maybe it's a little bit on Dan because he's the local guy, but I think you also have insights as well. Dan, based on your understanding of the model that's necessary, I hear we have energy here. I hear we have fiber optic lines that go between Chicago and New York City. I hear that we have excess pipeline capacity that could be used. I hear we have transmission lines that used to bring the energy in that could bring it out. In your mind, and I'd be glad to hear anybody on the panel, how applicable is the model to this area, and if it is, why, and if not, why not?
Okay, so first of all, let's go back to the most important thing about these AI data centers is power, right? I hear people talk about labor and fiber optics and all those other things. Those are important, but the important is power. And so when you go to Cameron's backyard or northeast Pennsylvania, they can drill a Marcellus or Utica well that can hit 30 million cubic feet a day, okay? And if I drill that same well here, I'm looking at maybe 10 million cubic feet a day. Very impressive stuff. For the same money, I can get 3 times the results. I wish it weren't so. I live here, I'm, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is we have to look at where that energy is coming from. On the pipeline capacity question, you have National Fuel Gas coming tomorrow. They know exactly what that capacity is. I would be very curious. There are some distinct advantages here to having some of the energy infrastructure that was here due to steel mills, heavy industry. We may be slightly overbuilt. We might have excess capacity in a number of ways there, and so maybe someone can grab that. But we're talking about Homer City over here, okay? And Homer City is that, it's that Goldilocks moment, okay? They're right near natural gas. They have a lot of pipeline. They have an infrastructure that's already built. They have a site. No one's going to fight about repopulating that site. And their only questions are going to be probably around some water and a little bit of farmland on the excess. Jim, am I getting that right?
Well, they already have a reservoir from the coal-fired plant, which is still in existence. They have acquired a lot of property in addition to what was already there. My understanding is they were pretty good about offering people fair prices for the property, and in some cases just so they didn't have to have a massive data center near their home. And if you want, HomerCityRedevelopment.com, they have a pretty good website. You can see what this is going to look like, renderings and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's very big and impactful. I think one of the key things I know that you said, Dan, that no one's going to oppose this, but believe it or not, there are some people out there that don't like fossil fuels.
Surely.
And so I mentioned the air quality permit that we're waiting on from DEP. I was at the public hearing for that. Probably 300-400 trade guys came up because the trade unions love this project, right? All the jobs it's going to bring, not just to my county, but to all of Western Pennsylvania. I mean, they're coming back to PA because they left. They're coming back for this project. And oddly enough, these people I didn't even recognize were standing up to testify against DEP issuing the air quality permit. They weren't people from my community, and it turned out they were from Penn Future. And so, that's the kind of thing, though, that, you need to be aware of, because they'll come from other areas to stop what you want in your community because, they think it's bad for the environment, but really it's not.
But really, to answer the Oil City question more, and I want to go back to that point, Jim, because I think it's a key consideration. So that these hyperscaler projects, if you want to know the difference between hyperscaler and down, Kenny's your man, right? But these hyperscaler, think of this, if we're going to spend $300 million or more, that's a hyperscaler. If we're going to spend, 5 or 10 million, that's not a hyperscaler, all right? Is that too, okay? So what we've seen, maybe converting the waste coal plant down here in Kennerdale or the single well that's out in the Polk area, those things we might see duplicated. We might see them turn better, but right now there's a green light, yellow light, red light out there for people making decisions on where to site these things, and I'm not sure that we're in the green area here. Now that's blunt, and I wish it were not true, but I think it probably is. But this gets us back to these projects. I didn't see this coming when I first heard from some folks in my sphere, which is mostly farmers and landowners, relatively conservative people in life and politics, okay, who had a lot of concern about water withdrawal, about power use, and how that might affect them. And by the way, all of this is happening partly by coincidence that we haven't upgraded our grid in a long time, but also partly because of the excuse of data centers, we're all going to get higher electric prices. Okay, so when those two things happen at the same time, it's going to be a tough sell community by community in Pennsylvania.
So, oh, go ahead, Kenny. I don't
Well, I
want
just wanted to add specifically to things like repurposing buildings. I mean, speaking realistically about what these data centers are, they are purpose-built buildings. So what they really want is open land. Now, they're happy to build on some of the brownfield sites, but the buildings in downtown, they're not going to be putting the data centers in here. Now, they might use these as maybe for offices for some things. They would encourage restaurants and other businesses to come back downtown. But the big advantage that you could definitely potentially see is that when you have a data center nearby, that provides the processing power, the immediate processing power that different types of companies want to be close to that. There is a value to being physically close. Even in the age of the internet, there's value to being physically close to these data centers. And so that's where you could potentially see some knock-on investment in addition to the data center itself.
So,
Can I-
no, please.
Just about the water and the energy issue. Traditional data centers do use a lot of water for cooling, okay? But the AI centers oftentimes will use a closed loop recycled cooling, and some of them even used wastewater. I've actually heard some use like a glycol, but that's really expensive, but that's in places where water's not readily available or other reasons. But they're probably a little bit more kind to the water issue. And as far as energy goes, some of the data centers sign special rate agreements or they build their own generation so that they don't shift the cost to the consumers and the ratepayers. And some of them even invest in helping to offset their cost to the local grid. So I think some of them are trying to be good neighbors when it comes to that. And it all depends, I guess, on which one is going to be in your neighborhood.
If I can just add quickly on the water point to give a scope. These data centers, yes, they use water, but it's on this course of maybe 5 or 10 golf courses. It's not, it sounds like a big number when you say 1 million gallons a day, but I mean, a golf course uses a lot of water too. So we need to be conscious of the scale we're talking about here.
Fair point. Okay, I was going to ask for the next question. I'm going to ask my question while I'm walking to you, though. So I actually wanted to get a panel set up, and we've touched on this a little bit, and I failed. I just couldn't get the right, interest in bringing the panel, but it's on the workforce issue. And what sort of workforce is required for the data centers? How can we encourage it in Pennsylvania? What's already being done, and so on. And so I just would throw that out to okay, please, and then I will hand
Sorry,
this.
I know I keep jumping in, but I was chair of labor and industry for 4 years. I'm vice chair now. I was appointed by Governor Wolf to be on the workforce development board, the whole deal. It's all about workforce. It's all about training, new skills, and all of that. Actually, it's a lot of old skills because the IEBWs of Pennsylvania are absolutely chomping at the bit for this. Those are the electrical workers. They are geared up to train. One of my pieces of legislation a year or two ago was to allow for even students who are not in the public school system, charter and cyber, and private schools to be part of the dual enrollment and early apprenticeship programs. We need to train these kids earlier and earlier so that they know what's available in Pennsylvania and they're ready to jump in and take advantage of those great paying jobs. The building trades are absolutely salivating over all of this, as they should, because they show up, they do great work, they get it done on time, and we should be supporting them all the way. But there are so many great, good paying jobs that are right around the corner, and we need to be focusing on training for them now, right now, because at the moment, there are a lot of jobs available in Pennsylvania we don't have enough workforce for yet. So we have to encourage these schools to be training people for all these potential jobs.
Are you all aware of any existing programs that, as I think a question came up in your first panel about programs related to well capping and so on, but related to some of the specific vocations related, right, coming out of Penn State or whatnot?
I would say a lot of the jobs are going to come through the trades, and the trades all have their apprentices and apprenticeships and trainings lined up. They partner with a variety of other trainers. They do a lot in-house. Camera, did I screw that up too much? Okay.
Jim, when I flew here to come to the meeting, I sat next to two of your constituents. It took me a long time to figure out that Indiana was Indiana, Pennsylvania, but I did. But anyway, they didn't mention you by name, but they did really speak quite highly of their state representative. I assume that was you. They made a lot of nice
I'll take it, yeah.
They made a lot of nice comment about the state representative and didn't tell me. My question is for you, Ken. For many of the projects that are looking at gas turbine electricity, and that wouldn't affect Jim's program, as I understand yours is gas-fired steam turbines in the power plant. But for gas turbines that are going in different places, Louisiana, do you see there's still a big push, seems to be quite a big push for nuclear. In fact, the federal government is just now letting contracts on these 11 different nuclear SMR demonstrations coming up. Do you see maybe that the gas-fired turbines could be replaced in a decade or something with nuclear plants and stop the consumption of the natural gas?
So, for one, the nuclear would be perfect for data centers. That is honestly an ideal generation source. The problem is the timelines for nuclear. We've already talked about timelines, so the timelines are even worse. But I would not expect that. It's going to be additive, because right now we need more of everything. So whatever generation comes from natural gas investments today, I would expect those to operate for many decades, and any additional nuclear that comes on is going to be in addition. Some of the forecasted electricity needs, I think, are a little, that people talk about are a little, overdoing it a little bit, but by any standard, there's going to be significant growth. And so what we need is more generation of all types. So I wouldn't expect, you'd be more likely to have, as these natural gas plants have long lifespans, you'd be more likely to have some of the older coal plants, if there ever reached a point where electricity was overbuilt, which I'm not sure is going to happen anytime soon. You'd shut down older coal plants, or you'd probably decommission some of the wind and solar facilities that maybe aren't eligible for subsidies anymore in 10 years. So no, I don't. I think the natural gas, what's built today, is going to end up kind of being a long-term backbone.
I got to chime in on this. The last nuclear plant we built in the U.S. just came online this summer in Georgia. It took 30 years, okay? SMRs are being promised in maybe 8 to 10 years. I want to share your optimism, but we're talking about 3 to 80 megawatts, okay? How much power are they putting into Homer City? It's 4.5 gigawatts, all right? Megawatts versus gigawatts. We are not going to power a large data center with SMRs. They're great. They're modular, takes a lot of stuff out of there. We can place them anywhere, but we're not going to duplicate the power needed for these things.
So I'll say SMRs have been 5 to 10 years off for the past 20 years. So I think we're getting close to time. I'd like to, first of all, I would like to thank the audience, because Andrew asked me to come up to help moderate some panels, and I didn't have to do my job at all. You all did it. So thank you to you. But I'd like to give each one of our panelists kind of the floor for a final minute as we close out. Anything you want to say to the audience?
Yeah, again, thank you for having me here today. Indiana County is about 2 hours from here, and this is only my second time in Oil City. But I appreciate what you're trying to do with this summit and the opportunities that are here. I really think what you see in my district in Homer City can be replicated around this state if we get government out of the way. As the senator said, the policies that are in place, policies that are being proposed, and the slow time in issuing all the permits needed for these facilities really does and has deterred those types of investments in this Commonwealth for many, many years now. We need to reverse that. We need to get government out of the way, and we could really see that come not just in my area, but across the state. So that's my hope, and I think that should be a vision that we all share. Thank you.
Very good. We know that the Industrial Revolution was built on steel and on coal, and the AI revolution can be built on clean, reliable power and intelligent infrastructure. Pennsylvania's got it all. We're ready to go. We can be the state that fuels America's next era of innovation. and we could do it responsibly, sustainably, and proudly.
So we've talked a lot about the optimism for AI and data centers in Pennsylvania, and I just want to encourage everyone to be aware that there is very organized opposition to data centers out there, and they will come here when the time comes. They will scaremonger over water. We've already talked about some people are already expressing water concerns that I consider unfounded, but that is already in the discussion. I think transmission lines is a little more legitimate because they're a bit of an eyesore, but that is something that is used as a wedge point to stop these types of projects. And those people will come here. They're not just NIMBYs. They don't want it built in anybody's backyard. So they'll come from New York or they'll come from San Francisco. They follow these projects around. You've already seen this with pipelines in Pennsylvania. That will be happening with data centers, and it's important if you want to be able to push these projects over the line, kind of need to organize in advance and be ready for that.
I think we have quite a hurdle to get data centers up in the next 6 to 12 months. And the frustrating part, I'm sure, for folks who want this to happen is we do have plentiful power. Adding another 10 BCF per day, it's a miracle that we can do that in Pennsylvania. The infrastructure that's needed, and that's not just permitting, that's manufacturing, is going to take some time. But in the end, this whole social license piece and folks being able to take that bait maybe, or that concern or fear they have, might make things hard on us. In a region like this, this region might look at smaller, more scalable data centers where they can control that atmosphere a little bit. And we should all be working towards this. Instead of us saying no to anything and saying because of this, we should all be working on what's the solution for that next problem. So.
All right. Would everyone join me in a round of applause for our panelists? Thank you.